They sat me by the radiator, right under the vent. It was 10:42 a.m., courtroom 4B in Raleigh. My son didn't say a word to me, just pointed toward the end like I was luggage. Not even a chair with padding, just the folding kind they usually stack near the exit. She was already at the front, her blazer too bright for a fraud hearing. Her parents sat front row, like they owned the place. I wasn't invited, but I came anyway. I wore gray, flat shoes. I'd checked the docket the week before and saw her name. I didn't tell anyone I'd be there. I just showed up. Quiet. Sat still. I don't think her lawyer knew who I was. He looked right past me like I was someone's assistant waiting to collect a briefcase. Fine, I've been invisible before, but something about that morning made it sting more than usual. They said I wouldn't understand the case, that I'd get confused with all the technicalities. But if I'm too simple, why did they use my name to open the original business account? Why was my credit score good enough when they needed the lease? Maria, my old co-worker from the DMV, called me last week and said, "You sure you want to go to that? I mean, they didn't even put you on the witness list." I told her I just needed to sit once, to see it myself. I wish I could say I wasn't hurt, but I was. I felt small, like I'd let myself believe that being the quiet one meant I was the respected one. Turns out, it just made me easier to ignore. I remember glancing down at my hands. They were shaking a little. I folded them tight. I hate how polite I've been. I kept watching the judge. She looked over at me more than once. I thought maybe it was a mistake, but no. Her eyes landed and held. Not long, just enough for me to feel something shift. She hadn't called me up yet, but she would. And when she did, I needed to be ready. March 12, 2020. I remember the date because that was the day I wired them $28,700 to secure their first office lease off Glenwood Avenue. They wanted suite 304, the one with a window facing the parking lot. She said natural light would boost creativity. I didn't argue. I just went to the bank and signed the wire form myself. No one came with me. I still have the carbon copy. Now, in court, she told the judge the company was her independent vision, built from the ground up. My stomach twisted. I folded my hands and looked straight ahead. She didn't glance my way. My son sat next to her like that version of the story made perfect sense. I once asked them, gently, why my name wasn't on the founding papers. My son said, "It's just easier for investors, Mom. You wouldn't want the paperwork to get messy." I didn't push. I thought, family is family. But if I'm part of the mess, why was my money clean enough? My cousin Denise, she's the blunt one in the family, told me last Christmas, "If they need your money, your name should be there. Period." I shrugged it off then. I wish I hadn't. I remember the day they brought me to see the office. I brought a plant, a pothos in a ceramic pot. She said, "Oh, thanks," and set it under the printer. I should have known then. I'm not angry that they left my name off the paperwork. I'm angry they looked me in the eye and acted like I imagined everything. "You didn't ask," she said once. That's true. I didn't. I didn't ask to be erased. You ever do something kind and later feel stupid for it? I sat there today, wishing I could go back and reread that contract slower. Wishing I hadn't signed anything just to be agreeable. The judge picked up the folder then. Her tone changed. Not much, just enough that even the clerk looked up. At exactly 11:26 a.m., I saw it happen. The judge flipped a page, tilted her head, and her voice changed. It dropped, not loud, not dramatic, but just enough to make everyone in that room shift in their seat. "This exceeds my jurisdiction," she said. She closed the folder slowly, like she was waiting to see who would panic first. They'd filed everything under the assumption this was a small local case, but the paper trail went across state lines. Wire fraud, multiple accounts, one of them tied to a Wells Fargo branch in Georgia, dated July 15th, $148,000. I remember that date because it was the same week they told me they were barely breaking even. My son leaned forward then. I hadn't seen him move all morning, but his knee bounced under the table, and he finally stopped nodding at everything his wife said. She kept a straight face, but I saw her grip the edge of the defense table like it might walk away from her. Denise, my cousin, had texted me back in July. "Why they posting Italy pics if they said they couldn't pay for preschool?" I didn't reply. I didn't want to believe it either. People like to say, "It's family, just trust." But here's the thing, if it's family, why does everything need to be hidden? Why not show the books? Why say, "Help us," then turn around and say, "You're not involved"? The judge looked straight at me. That part I won't forget, like she was checking if I understood what was coming. My heart thudded loud in my chest. I kept my face still, but inside, I was trying to remember every email, every text, every wire note. Part of me still felt guilty. I missed Ava's 3rd birthday because I was working overtime to help them cover a temporary payroll delay. I sent money that week instead of flying out. She sent me one picture of Ava with a cupcake. That was it. No call. But in that courtroom, for the first time, I wasn't just the mother. I was a witness, and the judge wasn't looking at them anymore. She was looking at me. I stood. The chair scraped hard against the tile, ugly and loud. For a second, it was the only sound in the courtroom. The judge nodded once, and I walked. Not rushed, not slow, just enough to feel my heels click on the floor, like I'd done this before. And truth is, I had. Not in court, maybe, but I've chaired school boards, sat in front of city committees, budget panels, grant reviews. They always think moms just pour juice and fold laundry. I remember one of the grants I helped write, $75,000 for a local reading program. My son once joked, "You're still doing volunteer stuff? Should have charged them like a real consultant." I laughed at the time. Now I'm wondering how long he's looked down on what I did. Judge Lang said, "Mrs. Weller, please take the bench." My son blinked twice. My daughter-in-law's hand covered her mouth like she'd tasted something foul, and I just kept walking. Behind me, I heard a whisper. It was Alicia, the clerk. We used to cross paths when she worked for the city council. She muttered, "I thought I recognized you." And then louder, "Ma'am, do you need the audio file pulled too?" Just like that. No fuss. I didn't look at them. Not once. Not yet. But I felt their eyes. You know what I was thinking, sitting in that seat? I thought about last Thanksgiving. They said the guest room was too tight now, and booked me a Motel 6 down the highway. It was $86.40 a night. I said nothing. I brought pies. People like to throw the word family around like a shield. But if it's family, why does everything feel like a transaction? Why am I the only one expected to stay silent for the sake of peace? I shifted slightly in the chair, adjusted my back. My son leaned over to his lawyer, whispering now. That was the first time he looked unsure. I didn't move my eyes. I waited for the clerk to cue the tape. I slid the folder open. Not dramatic, not loud, just methodical. Page 1 had her signature, dated March 4th. Page 3 had mine, except it was reversed. Same format, different clause. In the original, I was listed as co-signer and advisor. In this version, I was just family support, non-binding. I remember that day, March 2nd, 6:17 p.m. She dropped off the documents, saying it was a simple update for the payroll grant. I had meatloaf in the oven and Ava sitting on the floor with crayons. She smiled too easily that day. I signed quickly, just wanting to keep things running. My mistake. A week later, something felt off. I couldn't explain it, just a tone in her email. Thanks again for streamlining. That word stuck. Streamlining what? That night, I scanned the original she'd left and sent it to myself. I labeled it Weller-Finance-REAL.PDF. Didn't even tell anyone, just saved it. My lawyer, Marcia, leaned in from the gallery now. Smart move, she whispered. Very smart. I gave her a small nod. She once told me, don't fight fire with fire. Fight with a timestamp. People think if you're quiet, you're naive. If you're kind, you're weak. But here's a question. If I'm so irrelevant, why did you need to rewrite the paperwork behind my back? I admit, part of me didn't want to believe she'd do that. I used to think she just didn't like me, that maybe I talked too much, or didn't dress right, or overstayed. But that wasn't it. She wanted the structure without the strings. My son went along with it, said it was cleaner this way. Cleaner meant no trace of me. I should have spoken up earlier. I should have read every line before trusting again. But I didn't. And now here we were, her name on a line that should have been ours. The courtroom was still. Even the court reporter had stopped typing for a second. I looked at the judge. I still had one more file. I thought she'd stay out of it. That's what my son whispered to her. He didn't even bother lowering his voice much, like I wasn't 3 feet away, like I hadn't written the first check that bought them their first Dell desktop. $1,299 at Best Buy, January 2020. He took the stand, calm, almost polite. Called me estranged, said I'd never understood the vision of the company, that I'd confused support with ownership. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink, but something behind my rib cage shifted. Back when they were brainstorming logos, I was the one printing mock-ups at Kinko's. I offered to pay a designer, but she said, let's keep it in the family. Now suddenly I'm not part of it. Alicia, the court clerk, passed me a tissue without saying a word. I hadn't even realized my fingers were shaking. She leaned closer and said, "He really said you were unaware?" Her tone wasn't pity. It was disbelief. Here's a question I never got to ask him directly. If I'm so unaware, why did you need my credit score to get the line of credit? Why use my address for tax documents? Why send your wife to me when you needed a $22,000 buffer for that patent filing? I was quiet because I didn't want to push him away. I thought if I waited, he'd come back around, that he'd see I was still here, still wanting to help. But silence didn't earn me grace. It bought me erasure. And still, I miss Ava. I miss the way she'd come into the kitchen, asking for blueberries and peanut butter crackers. I kept a pack of those crackers in my purse for months, just in case they dropped by. The judge asked for a recess. People stood. I stayed seated. I didn't trust my legs yet. I kept my eyes on the table, thinking about the second file I hadn't shown. Yet. It happened at 2:41 p.m. The paralegal left her mic hot during the break. I didn't mean to hear it, but the audio was live for courtroom recording. My daughter-in-law's voice came through clear, like she was sitting next to me. "She's just bitter she didn't keep up," she said. Not angry, not whispering, just flat, like it was fact, like I was the one who failed to adapt, so now I was dragging them down out of spite. Then she added, "I told him she'd be dead weight." She said that while wearing the diamond ring I paid for, resting her elbow on the $4,600 ergonomic chair I ordered from Herman Miller when they opened the office. Sasha, the junior associate next to her, froze. She tried not to react, but her eyes darted toward the mic light. That was all I needed, a reaction, a witness. I wrote it down in my yellow legal pad. Not the words, just the time and initials. Sasha B. heard it. I slid the note to Marcia, my lawyer. She didn't even look surprised, just nodded once and whispered, "Document everything." Here's the thing. If I'm bitter, why did I co-sign for the lease? If I'm dead weight, why'd you call me the day before payroll bounced, asking for a bridge loan? And if I didn't keep up, who taught you how to balance vendor payments before launch? I should have drawn the line earlier. Not when it was public. When it was private. That first time she cut me off in a staff meeting and said, "Let's let the younger folks handle it." I laughed it off. I didn't want to make it awkward. Big mistake. And yeah, I was embarrassed. I'd told my book club they were building something together. I even invited them to follow the company Instagram. One of them later asked me, "Why aren't you tagged in anything?" I lied, said I preferred privacy. I circled the timestamp again and kept my eyes forward. The judge was about to come back in. At exactly 3:05 p.m., I asked the judge for 5 minutes with a court recorder. Not a speech, not a plea, just to enter one statement and submit one file. Judge Lang nodded. I stood up, walked to the front, and said one line into the mic. "This is my financial trail, and this is their acknowledgement of it." Then I handed over the printed email thread. 11 messages, dated between June 9th and July 14th, all from her Gmail. Subject line, "Bridge Support Agreement." Attached voice memos, too. One was 42 seconds long, her voice, calm, friendly. "Thank you again. I'll make sure you stay listed as equity partner." That was her exact sentence. We had it matched by a third-party verifier weeks ago. Marcia stood quietly beside me, just folding her arms. She didn't need to add anything. Facts don't need backup singers. The room was still, not because of drama, but because it was all laid out, time-stamped and verified. A young man in a blue shirt, court tech support, turned to the judge and said, "The audio matches her login credentials. Location pings are consistent with the sender IP." Then he looked at me, not with sympathy, with respect. I didn't cry, didn't yell, just exhaled through my nose and sat back down. That was it. My son leaned toward his lawyer again, faster this time. His leg was shaking under the table. She looked right at me, then said quietly, "We'd like to request an adjournment to re-review new evidence." Judge Lang didn't even blink. Denied. Part of me wanted to look at them, to ask if it was worth it, burning this much ground just to keep control. If we're family, why did I have to bring files and audio to be heard? I felt my hands tighten in my lap. I'd waited too long to draw the line. But now it was on record, and I wasn't done yet. She didn't blink. My son kept staring at the floor. When the foreperson said, "Guilty," I didn't even look at the jury. I just watched the two of them. One trying not to cry, the other too proud to show it. 3 counts: wire fraud, falsifying investor disclosures, conspiracy. One of them tied to a signature that used to be mine. Scrubbed and replaced in July 2021. I remembered the day. It was the same day I brought over a rice casserole for their housewarming. The Pyrex dish cost $34.99 from Bed Bath & Beyond. I never got it back. The judge thanked the jury. The bailiff gave instructions. The room started shifting, gathering, clearing, but I just sat there. Not out of pride, just worn. Like something long and heavy had finally dropped off my shoulders. That's when Diane, my old neighbor, walked past and paused by my seat. She whispered, "I always knew you weren't just quiet. You were watching. Smart." Then she kept walking. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. But part of me still ached. Not because she was guilty. Because I let it get this far. Because I stayed silent when I knew something felt off. Because I didn't ask harder questions when the paperwork shifted tone, when the birthday calls stopped, when the tone of, "Mom, it's easier this way," became too smooth. I kept thinking silence would earn respect. It only bought me invisibility. Family isn't supposed to need a court transcript to see you. If they trusted me enough to use my name on bank forms, why was it so easy to erase me on press releases? I looked over. They still didn't meet my eyes. But someone else did. The young court clerk with braces. She mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded once, quietly. And as the room emptied, I realized it wasn't just about what was said out loud. It was about what had finally stopped being ignored. I walked out at 4:16 p.m. The hallway was mostly cleared, except for a clerk, couldn't have been older than 22, leaning against the wall near courtroom B. She straightened when she saw me. "Ma'am, that was something," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. I nodded once. No smile, just acknowledgement. That was enough. I didn't linger in the lobby. I didn't look around to see if they were behind me. I stepped out into the late February air and reached for my keys. My Buick LaCrosse was parked in the hourly lot across from the courthouse, spot number 43. That car had driven me through 10 years of board meetings, 2 funerals, and now, this. I sat inside, hands on the steering wheel. Didn't start the engine, just breathed. Then my phone buzzed. One new message from Linda, my cousin in Durham. "Saw the news. You held the line. Proud of you." I hadn't even told her I'd be in court, but someone had, clearly. I stared at the screen for a while before replying. Wasn't for show. Just did what had to be done. Sometimes people say, "But they're still your kids," like it's a trump card. So I ask, if I'm still their mother, why was I only ever called when they needed a name on a form? If family matters so much, why did I only exist on paper when it helped them? Truth is, I missed my grandson's last birthday, January 17th. I wasn't invited. I told myself he'd ask about me. Maybe he did. Maybe they told him I was busy. That part still stings. Not because I want balloons or cake, just the chance to hand him a card and say, "You matter," even if I'm not in the photo. So no, that seat on the bench wasn't payback. It was proof that I hadn't disappeared, that I hadn't been erased, that I could sit in full view and not shrink. And the next morning, I woke up before sunrise because someone else had quietly reached out.